Thank y'all for being here. Thank you for this work session. I asked Skip Gruber, our county commissioner, to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to do the invocation, so please stand real quick and do the invocation. Please bow with me. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Lord, as we go through this, let us make the right decision for this county. And Lord, thank you for this weather that we are receiving. In Jesus' name, amen.
Please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Jay, thank you. And I did forget to tell y'all this. Please, if you, just a friendly reminder to watch your phones. Put them on silent if you don't mind. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman, you guys ready?
Yes, sir. Waiting for you.
All right. Well, thank you all for the meeting this morning and taking the time to go through this. Before we get started, I really wanted to kind of thank everyone for providing a lot of great comments on the draft regulations that we presented a month or so ago. The development community did a good job, coming together with a real organized and unified list of comments that were really good and help will definitely make this a much better document than with the changes that we'll go over today. But we had a lot of good comments from the development community, from the citizens, and from the Planning Commission. So it was really good process to go through and have a lot of points brought up that were good points that we didn't realize with our previous draft, but we'll go through those today. One of the things too, just to cover real quick, is there's been a lot of questions about just the timing, why it's important to address this now. And with the current regulations, what we face every month and through our development review process, there's a lot of unclarity in the existing regulations, and it's kind of causing a lot of confusion about what's required, what's not required. The review process doesn't get consistent reviews, and it delays development reviews and kind of puts the planning staff, the planning commission, the county commission, and the developers kind of in a little bit of a gray area. So one of the main things that we're trying to accomplish with this is to make sure we have a very clear document of exactly what's required and what's not required, and the exact time frames that things must be processed in. And we'll cover a lot of that today, but just wanted to say that's, there is some urgency to get this done, because I think the longer we go with this, the more confusion and unclarity it continues on through our design and development review process. So getting started now. So what we're going to do today, we're going to talk about kind of the common topics that we received in the comments. We'll discuss each one of those and offer potential resolutions for each. And I think we'll see today that there's 85 to 90% of the comments are good clarity things that will have an easy resolution that I think will meet everybody's needs. There are a couple topics we'll have to discuss in a little more detail, but the vast majority will be incorporated with no issues. After we go through the whole presentation to discuss all the comments, we'll have a period where the public can come up with the 3-minute time period to provide any additional feedback. And after that's done, we'll discuss time frame to complete and adopt the subdivision regulations after today. So, going through the topics we received, The first one, we had a few comments that were really related to old regulations that really aren't even in the current regulations or the proposed amendments. So, we're not considering anything that was in old regulations. Like, we've moved on beyond that some time ago, and we're not going to bring any of those back. So the second topic was, which is the vast majority of it, is just really clarifying a lot of items in there that would reduce the inconsistent interpretation that's kind of occurring right now. The third is to establish review timeframes that each step of the permitting process must be completed within. The fourth would be open space requirements. There was a lot of great comments about open space, mainly just about some of the design requirements and how to calculate required open space. Stormwater and low impact development requirements, there was some comments on that, mainly about clarity of how we are going to judge those things, the utility requirements, and then finally enforcement. So getting into some of the clarification items, and I'm going to try to go through these pretty fast because I said pretty much every one of these are just we agree and we'll fix it. So I don't anticipate a lot of discussion on these, but if anyone has any comments, we'll get to that later. But the definition, one of the comments received was definition of development should remain as currently defined. And as we did more research on it, we agree that the existing definition in the current regulations is consistent with the state definition, so we're going to leave that as is and not change that part. Update definition of flag lot to clarify that the narrow corridor flagpole may not have any obstructions such as wetland, dirt pits, et cetera. This was mainly about making sure that when a flag lot is developed that they can actually use the access corridor to access the main part of the lot, and we agree that's a very good comment. The updated definition of setback lines to clarify that parking pads are not allowed within the highway setback. We agree with this. Obviously, this would be for required parking. Doesn't count that because there's a lot of required parking that has to happen in those front yard setbacks, but any kind of overflow parking pads or areas would not be allowed because that's something we have to deal with periodically. And just to clarify, the highway construction setback is a state mandated thing we have to deal with some of the major roadways and enforce. Update the front yard setback definition to prevent parking in front yard. This one, we can't be modified in this way because the majority of driveways which parking is expected to occur is in the front yard. So that's one thing that, we just, I know that the intent of this comment was probably about overflow parking, but having a broad statement like that would have some unintended consequences that we wouldn't really be able to modify that way. We need to add a definition for low impact development, which we agree we will add that, and we'll talk more about the specifics of what we're trying to achieve and what low impact development we measured on later. The next part is about family subdivisions. If you remember, we had proposed to add a 24-month deed restriction on this. After comments received, there was a lot of comments about this, to basically saying don't change it, and not sure of the authority we have to impose a deed restriction. And the state law is a little bit vague on this, so there's not a really clear path for us to do this. So we've agreed that we're just going to leave this as it is for now. The regulation already states that it has to be done in accordance with state law, and I think that's as far as we can go with that. So we've agreed to just remove that proposed revision and leave it as currently adopted. There was a comment proposing a revised fee structure for sketch plan approval, and we made a lot of changes to kind of the flow of the review process, and one thing was trying to make it a little bit easier to go through a pre-application and sketch plan process to make sure that we get the development on the right track early on in the design process. So this is a really good comment about, because right now the way the fee structure is is calculated as $250 plus $40 per lot. And keep in mind, this is not for a preliminary plat or construction plan. This is just a pre-application meeting. So it comes to be a $10,000 fee for a 250 lot subdivision just to do a sketch plan, which is not really appropriate at that stage. So we agree we're going to change that to make it a flat rate. What we're proposing would say, $500 flat fee for 25 lots or less, $1,000 flat fee for 26 to 100 lots, and $2,000 flat fee for greater than 100 lots. The one thing I just want to clarify on this, the fee structure for any of the application fees isn't actually in the regulation. That's adopted as a second resolution by the county commission. So we would bring that with to the commission at the same time with the proposed amendments with the revised fee structure. So I say that to say there's not going to be, you're not going to see a fee structure in the regulation itself. It's a separate document. Some clarification on the needs for large acre subdivisions. So this is subdivisions that have 20 acre lots or more. The question was, if the large lots front on a 60-foot wide easement and not bisected, who will own the easement, and are you requiring a POA to be set up? So no, we don't expect a POA to be set up for these large lot subdivisions. What we want is these easements to follow common lot lines, because oftentimes as time goes on after the subdivision is created, those easements will become county roads at some point in time in the future. And so we want to make sure we set it up in a way that it doesn't unjustly impact any single lot. It kind of follows lot lines. Everybody kind of shares the burden of providing access on that. And I got a couple of graphics to explain what this means. So if you have a large tract and you're dividing it just to say 3 20 acre plus lots. What we're saying is that what's currently allowed is that if there's this existing dirt road that runs through the property that's not a right of way, it's just a trail or whatever, the owner can just dedicate this easement that meanders across all 3 lots and kind of create some different impacts to each one of the lots. And as you can see, is that if that easement ever becomes a right-of-way, a county right-of-way in the future, you create these kind of unusable little remnant tracts that could cause issues long-term. So what we're saying is that you got some options. When you do that 3-lot subdivision, you can provide the easements along the common property lines, and that meets the requirement, and we've got no problem with that. Or if you did want to use the existing dirt road as your access point to not have to construct new dirt roads or anything, you could just design your lots around that existing trail and put the easement along that trail. So it's really about making sure we're kind of thinking ahead to the future that as these things are broken up, and this is just a random site I picked up in North Baldwin County, but you can see this one, that dirt trail actually leaves this property and goes to the next property. So it's a good assumption at some point in time this is going to have to have some type of continuity of access there. So it's just kind of having a better plan going forward as we're dealing with these large lot subdivisions to make sure that we have the easements in place that can be utilized in a different fashion in the future. Preliminary plat requirements, add submission of phasing plan to the preliminary plat. We're already doing this in practice now, but it wasn't specified in the current regulations, but there's a lot of things that are triggered by phase, like the proposed open space requirements have to be met by phase, access has to be met by phase. So understanding what that phasing plan will be up front will be important. So we agree that this is something we should add to the regulations. The effective period of preliminary plat, clarify extensions must be for a valid reason. Planning Commission should be provided a letter saying that it has a valid reason for the extension request. We get this a lot. There's a lot of extensions that come in for different reasons. The developments are at different stages of development. We can definitely add some qualifiers to this. But I think that we would have to be very careful to establish some parameters, because there's different things that occur during the development process. You know, there's sometimes delays in permitting, there's sometimes delays in material and construction activities. So, you know, having some statement of why the extension is needed is fine, but I think we just need to be very careful that we don't start denying extensions if there's not a real good reason to do that. One potential solution that I came up with was just that the development must have obtained a subdivision construction permit to qualify for extension, because most of the time they're already either had their permits or they're under construction and need an extension. Sometimes that's not the case, so we just need to have kind of a cutoff point to say, has this development progressed far enough that it makes sense to give it an extension. Article 5.1.1, there were several questions about this development design standards table. One, add clarification that the 60-foot wide lots must implement the alternative street section shown in figure 5.1. Define what is considered high density and clarify when the alternative street section is required, so that's kind of the same comment. And then if a landowner has a property that is zoned to allow 60-foot lots, does this table apply, or does the table apply only in unzoned areas? So we agree that we definitely need to clarify when that alternative street section is being used. So what we would propose to add to the table is that when lots are between 60 feet wide and 80 feet wide, the alternative street section is used. Anything above 80-foot wide lots, the typical street section is used. And we'll add some clarification. There's a little bit of a footnote to this table already, but we'll add some additional clarification that when the subdivision is in a zoned area, the zoning ordinance dictates the area and dimensional requirements, such as lot size. So that in zoned areas, that zoning district trumps this table. It still has some different things about some of the design requirements to meet to do whatever size lots available, but if the district is zoned to allow a certain lot size, we would allow that lot size to go in there as long as they meet the design standards. This comes up a lot at a lot of the planning commission meetings about when we have these larger developments with the cluster mailbox units, about how much parking is really necessary to provide those things. And so we thought it was a really good comment about just have some clear direction about how many parking spaces have to be applied. And was to do some research, I found some standards that, so what we would propose is to say 0 to 20 mailboxes, would be 1 space required, 21 to 60 mailboxes, 2 spaces required, 61 to 80, 3 spaces required, 81 to 100, 4 spaces are required, and then 101 plus, it would be 4 spaces plus 1 for each additional 50 mailboxes. So that's a pretty consistent standard across the country to use for these CBU. This is something that the Postal Service is really mandating in most new developments. So we're kind of getting our regulation up to current times with how to address those. Going on to 5.4a. The question is, why is 40,000 square feet of contiguous uplands required where public water and sewer are not provided? The answer to this is 40,000 square feet of contiguous uplands are required by health department standards to accommodate on-site well and non-engineered septic sewer systems. So when you have some of these large lots, they may be 50 plus acres, but 49 of the acres are wetlands. So we want to make sure that as lots are created, there is a buildable space that has the right area needed to accommodate the well and septic system if it doesn't have water and sewer available. So it's really just making sure that we're creating lots that can actually be used. On 5.4A3, they wanted to add, except where LID techniques are being implemented, then a minimum lot width of 60 feet. That's just a clarification. I think that's a great clarification, that statement, because that's certainly what the intent was with that item 3. We will add that. 5.5.7, this is we had proposed a requirement for developments of 50 lots or more that is adjacent to an unpaved road, that the unpaved road must be paved as part of the development. The comments came in, there was some that said, well, that really should just be to where the access point on that dirt road is. And also there was some concern or question about the constitutionality of requiring a development to pave a road that they're not directly impacting. So there were some really good comments on that. So we've kind of rethought that to figure out how to accomplish what we're really trying to accomplish here is to minimize dust impacts to the new homes that are built in these new developments. That's what we're really trying to accomplish here. So we think we can achieve that by saying we agree it's only required to be paved to the access point on that dirt road. Anything beyond that remains unpaved, that landscape buffer that abuts it just needs to be increased from 10 feet to 20 feet to give a little bit more vegetation to knock down the dust and to reduce the impacts on the new homes. So that's will be our proposed change for that. Added clarification that the second access does not have to be built with on the 50th lot, but rather during some future phase of the project. And then added clarification that a variance can be requested for sites that are unable to meet this requirement because there are some circumstances that can't be met, exactly how it's written. So we will definitely do that. That was certainly the intent. What we want is that it doesn't necessarily have to be built on the 50th lot, but as a phased project is being constructed, we just need to know at what phase another access point is coming on. So this is all about, fire access and health safety to the health and safety access to the new development. We have several situations around the county that are larger developments that have one access point that have, as they've built out, have become a safety problem. And so we're just trying to make sure that we don't continue to go down that path. So we will certainly clarify that it doesn't have to be built by the 50th. We just need to know when it's going to come online with the phasing and understand what it's going to be. And just for a little bit of comparison, the ISO guidelines really state that anything over 30 lots needs to have 2 access points. That's what most of the municipalities go by. We think that's a little bit too stringent for the county, so we upped that to 50, because the additional comment we received was that 1 access point should be enough for developments up to 100 lots, which, so we're above the standard. Like we're increasing that minimum lot number above the standard already. So going anywhere above that would not be advised to do. Some clarification on the traffic study requirements. The question is, why does this state the qualified traffic engineer and not a professional engineer? We will update this to clarify. The intent here is that it must be a professional engineer, a PE, that has experience in traffic impact studies and approved by the county engineer designee. So we will clarify that. That wasn't actually even in our proposed changes, but it was a good comment that we need to add in. The other thing is that we already do and will continue to do that when it's a large development, we get third-party engineering review of all infrastructure. If it's traffic, drainage, and utilities, that we have a third-party review, our review, just to make sure that we have a good product coming out. Street design standards. There were several comments about how the proposed street trees would interact with the underground utilities within the county right-of-way. And again, add clarification when that alternative street section is to be used, which we've clarified that now. But we agree there's a lot of unintended consequences with allowing street trees to go in the right-of-way, so we're going to agree and say that they can be moved outside of the right-of-way, just be within 5 feet of the front lot line. And that should eliminate those potential conflicts with underground utilities and sidewalks and things like that. Add cross grades. The sidewalks must comply with current ADA requirements. This is on the sidewalk section. We agree. We'll clarify that. Common areas. So this is about really the sodding versus seeding requirements for common areas. The comments received were, can we modify the solid sod of drainage features to allow for permanent solid stand of vegetation? And add on wet ponds, sod should be placed on the slope to the water level. On dry ponds, sod will be placed on the entire slope. Also clarify that only disturbed common areas require seed and mulch. And we agree with all three of those comments. We will definitely clarify that. That's not an issue. That would meet our intent. This is about the detention ponds. We had a statement in there that said county engineer reserves the right to require fencing or other safety measure. It says needs clarification on when fencing would be required. This was an add-on. It was, we don't face this too often. We're just going to remove this sentence. I think this is something that can just be reviewed as part of the drainage design, because if you have proper side slopes on the ponds, you can kind of solve this problem with proper side slopes and vegetation and stuff. So this sentence is just not really needed, so we're just going to take it out. This is on the stormwater management plan required for the preliminary plat application. The comment was remove the finished floor elevation requirement for preliminary plat requirements. At this stage, only generalized drainage design is complete, and it would be nearly impossible to accurately establish finished floor elevations. We agree that we will remove that. This really comes into play when it's construction plan and final plat stages. So we will remove this from the preliminary plat application requirement. On the CMBP plans, the real comment here on this first one was the Realtors Association's attorney reviewed this and picked up that we have a CMBP requirement in the zoning ordinance, and the question was really, why are we duplicating it in the subdivision regulations? That's the essence of the comment. I think the simple answer to that is that obviously not all areas of the county are zoned, but with all development, we need to make sure we're having proper construction stormwater management. So without putting it in the subdivision regulations as well, we have no way of managing that outside of zoned areas. So the simple answer to that is the subdivision regulations establishes construction standards for development activities, and it's appropriate to include the CMBP standards with the subdivision regulations. The intent of this revision is to have the same standards in both regulatory documents, as not all areas of the county are zoned. It's expected there would be duplication between the zoning ordinance and the subdivision regulations. But there's a couple of minor updates. We'll make sure the wording is exactly correct, the same in both. On that same topic, the comment was to insert QCP after design engineer, because the QCP is who is actually responsible for managing on the contractor and designer side of managing the stormwater plan. So we agree we will add that in there for clarification. Yes, sir.
First, my memory on what that acronym is.
I always have to read it again myself. Construction Best Management Practices Plan. Oh, the QCP. Oh, Quality Control Professional, is that right? Am I saying that right? I believe that's it, what it is. Yeah. All right, so going on to design criteria, the comment, this is for the CMBP plan, need to clarify if the ADM general MPDS permit is needed to be issued and outline when that's needed. And we will clarify in this section that yes, you still have to get your MPDS permit, and basically it has to be obtained prior to the commencement of construction. We'll just clearly state that in this section. Site stabilization, this goes back again to the sodding and seeding. The comments were, can we modify the solid sod of the drainage features to allow for permanent solid stand of vegetation, and clarify that only disturbed common areas required seed and mulch. and what is required for areas that may not be built on within 6 months. So the answer that we agree with all three of these comments. We'll amend to clarify that solid standing vegetation is acceptable. The only disturbed areas require seed and mulch. That last sentence we'll delete. It's a little bit contradicting, and I think it's not really needed with the rest of that section. Basically, if it's disturbed, it has to be vegetated to stabilize it. So there's no real point of saying temporary vegetation must be established within 6 months. So that's a kind of a statement that doesn't need to be in there. Non-compliance of the CMBP plan, need to clarify explicitly what constitutes continued compliance issues or impacts and what warrants a stop work order being issued. And this is specifically about during construction, if there's continued failures of the stormwater management plan and sediment continues to leave the site. We agree, we'll clarify this. The continued compliance issues are sites that have more than 3 compliance violations within 60 days. And we'll clarify that stop work order can only be issued on sites that meet this definition. And just to clarify too, stop work orders doesn't mean that they can't do anything out. That means that they can't continue constructing the development until they get their sediment control plan is back in place as approved. So they would just need to put that as a priority to reestablish their erosion control plan. Special requirements for RV parks and campgrounds. We were requesting that a commercial turnout permit be sent in with the PUD application. The comment that was received with commercial turnout permits will require roadway design and drainage calculations to be completed. Why would this be needed prior to submitting a PUD application? This wouldn't be feasible unless the applicant pursued civil design prior to submitting the PUD. And we agree. What we're trying to accomplish here with just the nature of the type of vehicles that are accessing RV parks, we just want to make sure that the geometry of the roadway accessing it is appropriate and can accommodate those large vehicles. So we'll reword that to state that a form of a TIS, really just showing that the turning movements can be met to get access to site with proper roadway widths and geometry. So it wouldn't require a full turnout permit. It would just really require enough analysis to show that the site can be adequately accessed by those large vehicles. So going on to the next section, so that was all the kind of clarification items. The next section was establishing review timeframes. The first piece with this was on the final plating procedure. We added some clarification on what that pre-application procedure should be when you're finished natural development and applying for your final plat. The comment we received was there needs to be additional clarity of what is included in the engineer's cost estimate, and there should be an outline timeline for review and approval of the engineer's cost estimate. So we agree. We'll clarify that the no deficiency letter must be issued within 14 days of a site inspection with no deficiencies found. So basically, once they have their final walkthrough and punch list items are complete, we have to issue their letter within 14 days. We'll put that as part of the regulation. The cost estimates, engineer's cost estimate has to include, because this is what the bonding requirements are determined from, has to include all required improvements of the development. And once it's submitted and a complete one is submitted, we'll have 14 days to review it and approve it. So on that same topic, the final plat review, timeline for review and notice of no deficiencies needs to be explicitly outlined. Proposed timeline for review is 30 days. We agree that the final plat must be reviewed and approved or comments provided within 30 days of complete application. So once that complete final plat application is in, they've got their no deficiencies letter that we have to turn around within 14 days. We'll have 30 days to review and approve the final plat application. And I think having this in the regulation is really good for everyone involved, because I think it puts a lot of set timelines in the regulation, it creates a lot of accountability, and kind of cuts through a lot of the bureaucratic process to get things processed on the back end and completed. The final comment on this same topic was proposed to add a 14-day review period once the applicant has submitted final plat. Like I said, we'll do 14 days for the no deficiency letter, but we would need a full 30 days to properly review and approve a final plat. But that we will definitely put those timelines in the regulation. Okay, so moving on to the next topic, which is the open space requirement. And so there'll be a little bit of discussion about this that we'll talk through, but the comments were really, really good comments about how we should handle open space. The first one we'll just start, which is a pretty simple answer. This first section was, we had a reservation for land for public purposes in here, and this is not for common areas. This would be like if there's a school or a fire station or something needed. The comment was, how can the Planning Commission determine what's necessary for schools and fires? Let the Board of Education be responsible for that, which we agree. This was, there was a, this could be, it'd be hard to administer this consistently across all developments. It could have some, condemnation characteristics to it, so we feel like it's appropriate just to remove it and not have that in there. Now, with the clarification, this section did spell out right-of-ways. Obviously, in a different section of the regulations, we do still require the ability to reserve right-of-way on strategic corridors and things like that, which is common practice. But for open space purposes, this statement will come out. We had a general comment that don't require any landscaping as it increases HOA cost, and open space. There's a lot of studies out there that show what open space does for the long-term value and livability of neighborhoods. So it's really important, and I think we'll see in a minute. There was a lot of comments that came in saying how important it is. So we definitely think the open space is a needed thing to leave in there. But it certainly adds to the long-term value of the homes in the neighborhood. 6.2, there was some clarification that says remove or new phase of existing development under subsection A, reduce lot size requirements to 15,000 square feet or less, and remove subsection B. So I'll address each one of these individual. On subsection B, that last one, which just said that basically the Planning Commission may require open space for any development. That's no discretion. That's too subjective, so we're just going to remove that altogether, and we're just going to have a very clean calculation of what's required and how it's required. We'll clarify in that section A that the intent for that is obviously if the new phase of the development already has preliminary plat approval, that's already approved and it can continue on like it is. But if it's some of these projects that go on for 5+ years where you have new preliminary plats coming in, the new preliminary plats that haven't been approved yet would have to meet the open space requirements. So obviously we're not trying to retroactively go back and grab any preliminary plats that's already been approved. Reduce the lot size to 15,000 square feet or less. Right now, the current method of calculation says you don't have to do open space for 30,000 square feet or more. And again, like I said before, the purpose of this, how we calculate this is making sure we're balancing that private open space in the yards and the public open space. So as you have smaller lots, you should have more public open space. Larger lots should have less. And we'll talk about it in a minute, but the development community had a really good proposal of how to better calculate that. Without answering this specific comment, because I think we're going to address that better here in a moment. So the comment we received on open space, and I'll just read this real quick. It says, I do believe that open space is needed in developments once they have a certain number of lots, and especially when lots are smaller with not much space in the yards. I found that they encourage more density in smaller lots in order to make up the in order to make up the cost of land lost. We need a way to provide open space and encourage larger lots. My proposal is based on open space on the number of units as opposed to a flat percentage. And we'll talk through this, but the fundamental idea of tying the open space requirement to the lot size and density is really, really good. Because I think that's really what we're trying to accomplish with this. I think it's much more appropriate than a flat percentage. Now, the proposal, it was tying the lot size to the lot width, and I'm not as concerned about the lot width as I am the lot area, like what square footage is. Like everything we talk about in our regulations is based on the square footage thing, open space being the same. So their proposal was obviously, if it's less than 25 lots, no open space required, which we already accomplished. If it's greater than 25 lots, but the lots are greater than 90 feet wide, and there's less than 50 lots, no open space is required. I think that has some challenges and some problems we'll talk about in a minute. But if it's 25 lots, and it's greater than 90 feet wide, and it's more than 50 lots, half acre per 100 lots. And if it's 25 lots or more, it's less than 90 feet, it's a quarter acre per 20 lots. And then when open space is required, the minimum lot area shall be half an acre. And then, of course, the 30,000 square feet or greater are exempt, which we agree with. So the fundamental principle of how this was accomplished, basically having a sliding scale based on the density and the lot size, I think is a really good one. I think some of the metrics of how we're measuring that maybe are not meeting our intended goal. So I did put together kind of an idea of taking that concept, which is a really, really good concept, and just tweaking it to the metrics. I think that how to calculate usable open space, this is a really, really good thing because it's tying directly the lot size and the number of lots to the usable open space required, which is where we're trying to be. But I would say, we need to tie it to a square footage and a square footage per lot instead of these brackets like that. I would say, obviously, if it's less than 25 lots, there's no open space required. And again, this is for usable open space. We'll talk about total open space in a second. If it's 25 lots or more, and the lots are, for every lot that's less than 15,000 square feet, you have to provide 600 square feet per lot of usable open space within the development. If it's lots of 15,000 square feet to 30,000 square feet, you provide 400 square feet per lot. So obviously, the bigger the lot, the less usable open space per lot has to be provided. And then I would just say the total minimum total open space, which includes wetlands, landscape areas, buffers, those type things, shall be 1,000 square feet per lot. So what this really accomplishes, and like I said, I really appreciate this thought that came in with this comment, is like it puts a direct nexus between lot size and density and required open space instead of just having a blanket percentage. So I do think it's a much better way of calculating what open space is required, and basically it gives the designers and the developers the opportunity to work through their design to meet their market demands, whatever the market is driving the lot size, and meet their open space requirements. They can get a little more creative on their side of the design, but then we have just a straight calculation of this is how you calculate your required open space. So I think it's a much clearer way of doing it. It's much more in line with the intent of what we're trying to accomplish. And what that means, just as an example, if you have a typical 40-lot subdivision, and hypothetically, let's just say 120 of the lots, it's a 120-lot subdivision, 60 of the lots are less than 15,000 square feet, and 60 of the lots are between 15,000 and 30,000 square feet. How that calculation would work, you'd say 60 times 600 square feet per lot for the small lots, that's 36,000 square feet. 60 times 400 square feet per lot, that's 24,000. So it's a total of 60,000 square feet of usable open space required for this development. And then for the total open space requirement, you'd say it's 120 lots times 1,000 square feet lots. So there must be a minimum of a total of 120,000 square feet of open space, which includes that buffer area and things like this, because this site doesn't have any wetlands. So again, this was a good concept that I would encourage us to include in the updates and instead of the flat percentage that we had previously proposed. Moving on to the minimum open space for PUDs. Obviously, PUDs are a little bit more unique than a typical subdivision. So the comment that came in was for PUDs, the usable open space should not include landscape and/or LID facilities. PUDs allow for unique planning with smaller lots, but specifically for the reason to have usable open space for residents when the lots are smaller. So PUDs already require, even under our current standards, 20% open space where normal developments don't require any. So this concept is already that there should be more open space with PUD. So we agree that, inside of a PUD, the LID areas shouldn't count towards your usable open space requirements, and your landscape areas there should be true usable open space when it's inside of a PUD. A couple of questions on the ownership and maintenance of the open space. A comment was received that there was a slight contradiction in the subdivision regulations and the zoning ordinance. The proposed subdivision regulations say the open space shall be held in common ownership, while the zoning ordinance says open space may be owned in common ownership. We'll clarify that clarification needs to happen in the zoning ordinance, so we'll correct that. But the open space, it should say in both, open space shall be held in common ownership. We don't want open space to only be owned by one person. It needs to be owned by the HOA. Who is responsible for maintaining landscaping? The county or the HOA. The HOA would be responsible for it. The HOAs are already responsible for maintaining the stormwater ponds and common areas that are currently being developed. So this is in line with current practices. We're just clarifying it in the regulations. How can planning staff determine dead or dying trees when require them to be replaced? And we'll put some clarification on this. What this statement was in the regulations were, so the bond has to cover all required improvements, which would include any landscaping that's required. So we're just reviewing it during that 2-year bond period. So once that 2 year, we're trying to release the bonds that we already do for other infrastructure. We're just going to make sure all the vegetation's alive, and if it is, if it's not, it'll just be a punch list item. It's got to be replaced before we can release the bond. So this is not something that goes on in perpetuity, and we're not going to get involved in the maintenance of open space and landscaping long term. This is really just that 2-year window between development completion and releasing the bonds. Moving on to the design requirements of open space. There was these 5 or 6 criteria about explaining how the open space should be designed and what qualifies as using open space. It was worded a little bit too loosely prior, and so you'll see a common theme with these comments that we just wanted an explicit regulation to say this is what we want you to do. So on this first one, to the extent the current statement says that to the extent practical, be centrally located and designed as an integral part of the development. This is open to interpretation. Define what the extent practical means and how it would be ensured this is applied consistently when is open discretion and ambiguous. So what we're proposing to change, we'll definitely clarify this, but maybe a proposed text amendment will be, shall provide centrally located community gathering areas for play spaces that are integral to the livability of the development. That way, it takes some of those vague words out of there. The second one was be appropriate dimensions to accommodate active and passive recreational use activities. This is also open to interpretation. Define what appropriate dimensions mean. How will it be ensured to be applied consistently as is open to interpretation. So our proposed change to that will be of appropriate size as described in figure 6.1 to accommodate active and passive recreational activities. So if you remember, and I don't have it on the screen, but we have a table that shows the different types of usable open space, and in that table, it actually has size, like a typical size requirements for each one of them. So we're just tying it back to that. So, when we say of appropriate size, we're saying it must, meet the requirements of that table of open space. The next one is be accessible to the largest practical number of lots or units within the development. Define what be accessible to the largest practical number of lots is. How will it be ensured that this apply consistently? It would be clear to state open space must have a minimum of one access point or area. And so we're going to propose to clarify that with be accessible to all lots or units within the development and shall not be isolated to the rear of lots in a manner that limits accessibility within the development. So the goal here is to make sure that open space that is reserved is not kind of put off to the side or to the rear of everything where people forget about it and can't get to it or use it, and it just becomes an overgrown mess. We want it to be part of the development. That's the key here. Lots or units should face or be adjacent to open space. Not adjoining lots or units shall provide safe and convenient pedestrian access to open space. So the question here is, are roads and sidewalks considered safe and convenient pedestrian access? How will it be ensured is applied consistently? What we're proposing to change this to is lots or units should face or be adjacent to open space. Non-adjoining lots or units shall be connected by safe, convenient pedestrian access to open space in the form of sidewalks within the street right-of-way or pedestrian paths or sidewalks within open areas. So we're just clarifying that, again, it should face or be adjacent, meaning like it shouldn't be tucked in behind everything and forgotten about, and it can be connected. The sidewalks within the streets can provide that safe connection. That would be what would be anticipated. But you could also use other trails and things through other open spaces if you choose. Number 4, depending on the size of the development, provide sidewalks and or trails throughout the open space area. And the question is, depending on what size of development, how will it ensure this is applied consistently? If this provision only applies to certain size subdivisions, that needs to be clearly stated. So we'll clarify that developments with greater than 80 cumulative acres within all phases provide sidewalks and trails throughout the open space. And again, this is all about activating those open spaces and making them integral parts of the neighborhood, not just kind of forgotten areas. Connect adjacent open space areas, provide a network of open space throughout the community. This isn't always feasible and could unintentionally limit the areas of proposed open space. Define what is considered adjacent. Will there be certain distance limitations in order to be considered adjacent or not? So we're proposing to change that to usable open spaces within the development shall be connected through sidewalks or pedestrian trails to provide a network of open space throughout the development. Sidewalks constructed along the streets can be utilized to safely access open spaces. And I think it's a good clarification because the way it was previously worded, it was a little bit ambiguous. Is it talking about connecting to open spaces outside of the development or so? But our intent was really just the open spaces inside the development should be connected and accessible to everybody so they have a network. So I think that will clarify that requirement. There needs to be clear guidelines about what is approved or not as it relates to natural areas being considered open space. We will add some more clarification to that, but what the intent here is all areas that are, if they're jurisdictional wetlands or buffers or other non-disturbed natural areas that they're not usable, they're not places where people can go and play and walk and things like that, but they're still open space. So we'll have a more clear statement that yes, they are open space, they're just not usable open space. So we'll clarify that. Define what is considered steep slopes or other areas considered unusable. We'll clarify this. We'll clarify that, again, this is about usable open space, not all open space, but so usable open space shall have a slope less than 8%, because again, remember, it's got to be usable by pedestrians, so anything more than 8% starts becoming problematic. And then we'll remove that sentence of all other areas considered unusable, because that's not needed in the regulation. The 50% of the required open space must be usable. I think we've already kind of, if we go forward with the recommendation of how we calculate usable open space that I just described a few slides ago, this statement will go away altogether because we've clearly defined exactly how usable open space is needed, so it's calculated. So this statement would no longer be needed with the new way of calculating usable open space. Applicant must demonstrate to the satisfaction of the Planning Commission staff that land can be used as an amenity. So what this piece of the regulation is talking about is like if you have areas around stormwater facilities, the intent was if it's activated properly, it can count towards your usable open space. It was a little unclear about what that meant. So what we'll change that statement to be is land utilized for drainage and stormwater management shall not be counted as open space unless the stormwater facility is a wet pond and contains amenities such as walking paths that will safely activate the area. So we'll give some very clear qualifiers of what it takes to activate a stormwater facility to make it a usable open space. Areas where LID techniques are used may qualify. This needs to be changed to will qualify. We agree. That is the intent, that if you're meeting LID standards, which we'll talk about more in a moment, those areas will qualify to be counted towards your usable open space. That's one of the incentives for using LID techniques. Landscape and buffers, a general comment, I think I mentioned this earlier, but remove all landscaping requirements as additional cost of HOA. Again, landscape buffer is an important component of preserving property values and buffering adjacent uses from new development. This topic comes up pretty much every planning commission meeting, where, especially in unzoned areas where you have a subdivision coming in and surrounding residents are saying, can they add a buffer just so that the new development doesn't have as much impact on us as it would. Right now, we can't require that at all, and that's kind of how we have to handle it now. So having these buffer areas and landscape buffers between the new development and existing uses, especially in unzoned areas, is a very important thing to manage the kind of the quality of life inside the new development and to the existing uses outside of the development. Define what is considered minor deviation from these requirements. We're going to remove this sentence. That doesn't need to be in there. So that will be resolved. Similar to the previous comment there, where does the street trees need to be planted? If planted in the right-of-way, they could conflict with utility corridors. Does the county want irrigation within the right-of-way? And like I mentioned before, we agree street trees need to be moved outside the right-of-way, just within 5 feet of the right-of-way line within the lot. Because we don't want to encourage any kind of utility conflicts or irrigation within the county right-of-ways that could conflict with future improvements by the county. Okay. So that's all the open space comments. Going on to stormwater requirements. The first one, we had a statement in there saying, that if they're discharging would work into an unnatural water system, the development has to secure the easements and drainage rights. This should not be required. The comment we received was this should not be required if drainage study accurately takes into account pre-development drainage conditions and discharge is returned to the natural sheet flow pattern. So we agree with that, especially when you use a lot of LID techniques, that there's ways you can do this that basically corrects the drainage outfall to mimic pre-development conditions. So we'll clarify that. Effects on downstream drainage areas. The comment received: do not agree that upstream flows cannot pass through the required detention area. When done correctly, this should be encouraged to regulate downstream impacts, which we agree that was an unintended consequence of the statement we put in there. So we're going to revise that and remove that sentence because that is correct. It would be encouraged that upstream flows pass through, be designed as part of the stormwater facilities within the development to manage them properly. Requirements of this section should be the discretion of the PE and for the proposed development. A lot of this section is talking about studying downstream impacts. So after it discharges, what is the downstream facilities, the ditches and culverts, how are they being impacted? So there's a lot of public infrastructure that has to be evaluated by this. So it's very important that we have some in our regulations that those things be part of the drainage study to make sure that we're not overburdening existing downstream infrastructure. But we will clarify that there's a couple of things in clarification that we'll fix. This is probably the biggest comment that came out of the LID and stormwater standards is on what basis will the county determine if LID standards are met to achieve the 60-foot minimum lot width. So we're going to clarify this. We've done a lot more research on and determine how what we're trying to accomplish this. And with LID techniques, every jurisdiction, they have different things they're trying to accomplish with LID techniques and stormwater facilities. So we're going to clarify that the regulation itself is going to say it has to go by the LID handbook, and what we're trying to achieve is a runoff rate reduction of 1 inch from pre-development conditions, a sediment reduction rate of 80% is achieved, and a nutrient reduction of 50% is achieved, because that's what we're really trying to accomplish with our LID stormwaters. We're trying to reduce runoff, reduce sediment loading, and reduce nutrient loading. And so the Alabama LID handbook provides guidance on how you calculate all those things. So if you provide documentation how those things are being met, then you have met LID standards and qualify for those bonuses. So with that, I'll just go through this real quickly. There's a couple ways that we would accept how that could be proven to, as part of the review process. So the Alabama LID handbook has a lot of references in it to the Georgia stormwater manual. And they have a really good site development review tool that they utilize, and it's kind of hard to see on the screen right here, but the design engineer can come in and input the information for all the drainage basins within the development to show pre-existing conditions and then post-development conditions of what LID techniques they're using. And it calculates automatically for you. The way the spreadsheet is set up by Georgia is that it says, did you meet, if the target runoff rate reduction is 1 inch, did you meet it? And so it does all the calculations for you. It says, yes, you met it. And also based on your LID technique you're using, shows you what your suspended solid removal is and proves if you've met that or not. And then the nutrient loading can be proven here also. So that's the simple way of doing it, because that's an established document that's out there that Alabama's manual does reference that we can use. But if the design engineer doesn't want to use that, then they have the option to prove this however they want. The Alabama manual for each LID technique does show how each technique, what sediment reduction it has, what nutrient reduction it has, and your normal stormwater calculations can prove if you've met your 1 inch runoff rate reduction. So for clarity, the regulation will simply say you must meet a runoff rate reduction of 1 inch pre-development conditions, a sediment reduction of 80%, and a nutrient reduction of 50%. How you do that, how you prove that would be up to the design engineer to do. But we give you some options, some tools that we would accept. Just a comment on the LID techniques. LID facilities are smaller in nature and need to be installed at the source of runoff, and often will need to be installed in the right-of-way. Can we add this allowance to the section? So we understand that's kind of part of the design process of LID, but there's a lot of unintended consequences of putting LID facilities in county right-of-ways. So what we're saying they should be placed outside of the county right-of-way. Now they can be placed in drainage easements and front yards, and there's different ways you can do it. We just need to get it just outside of the county right-of-way. Because there's, as we mentioned before, there's all these utility corridors and things within the right-of-way that we don't want to create any unnecessary conflicts in there. Additionally, there are development incentives tied to using LID techniques. So if there are incentives for doing that, those techniques should be housed outside of the public realm. So our answer to that would be, we understand that that's good practice and a good standard way of handling LID, but there's a lot of unintended consequences with putting those facilities inside the county right-of-way. Clarify that LID standards are met by the developer who qualifies for reduced lot width. We agree that is the intent, so we'll make that very clear that if you have met those LID standards that we just discussed, that you have gravity sewer inside your development, you do qualify for those 60-foot lots. So comment about the statement in here says the county engineer or designee has the authority to exempt these requirements for developments with extenuating circumstances based on constraints. Economic constraints shall not be considered. Water quality and quantities shall still be addressed. So the comment we received is the county engineer or his designee has the authority to exempt requirements. How can this be guaranteed to be applied consistently if application is at the discretion of the county engineer or designee? So we agree that's kind of a broad statement. We'll remove it. I think we've covered our intent in other areas, so we don't really need that sentence anymore. Request LID techniques be removed until Baldwin County has clearly outlined the proposed regulations, techniques, and manner in which they will be applied consistently. Obviously, we've just gone through that, so we're not going to remove them. We've clarified exactly what we want to do with that, so there's no need to remove this section. The method of calculation for stormwater, we were trying to modernize our methods for stormwater calculations. So there was a proposed rewrite that was sent in. It says the method for determining stormwater runoff shall be as follows. The engineer may use rational method for determining inlet spacing, roadway spread, and the sizing of open and closed pipe network and collection basins. For areas greater than 200 acres, the engineer may use the regression equation, rural urban, or SCS method only. So we agree with this rewrite. The only clarification we want to say is that the engineer shall use rational method for determining inlet spacing. And so replace may with shall. But other than that, this is fine. We'll update that.
Jay, can I stop you?
Yes, sir.
Y'all mind if we do a 5-minute break? The older I get, I gotta go to the restroom.
Hey, I'm tired of talking for a little bit too. So
Y'all mind if we do about a 5-minute break? We'll be back at 10:12.
Yep.
Okay, I'll be back in just a second.
Last slide or so about stormwater, but we had a provision in there that said that culverts within county right-of-way shall not be permanently surcharged in submerged water. The question was, can we modify this to say existing stormwater culverts in the right-of-way? Because given the flat topography in many areas of Baldwin County, a pressured stormwater system is sometimes necessary. I understand that we do not want to surcharge culverts that weren't designed to be submerged, but properly designed pressure systems on new projects should be allowed. So we agree with that. We'll clarify that existing culverts cannot be surcharged, and also clarify that new systems that are designed to be pressurized would be allowed with the approval of the county engineer. The master lot grading plan requirements of the stormwater design, there was some great revisions that were proposed by the group. It kind of clarified exactly what we're really trying to look for and accomplish here. You can see some of the changes, like took out some of the terms and made it a little bit more of a generalized grading plan, which is really what's intended. So we'll change all those strike throughs that are shown there on the screen. Do the subdivision regulations identify when a master lot grading plan is required? Yes. So any subdivision that has lots of less than 40,000 square feet must set FFEs and have a master lot grading plan. And we'll make sure that's very clear. This was probably the best comment about this piece of it was if the lot grading plan is part of the approved construction plans, county staff can require lots to be built exactly as those plans. Will the home builder be able to use another engineering firm to produce lot grading plans? Due to this, if a lot grading plan is required in construction plans, it should include proposed minimum FFEs, direction of stormwater flow, and lot grading detail only. This gives the contractor and the home builder enough information to grade the lots to match the engineer's intent for stormwater management. The detail could look something like the graphic to follow. We'll look at the graphic in a second, but yes, that's exactly what we would expect. So just enough information on that master lot grading plan so the home builder and their engineer knows what that development engineer intent was for stormwater to make sure the flows are going as designed in the master stormwater plan. Just a simple change here, change cross section to typical section. We'll do that that's not a big deal. But that detail we're talking about, and we'll actually add this into the subdivision regulations to clarify what we're looking for. We just want stormwater flows on the master lot grading plan. We want FFE, intended stormwater flows, and then have a detail of this is what we would expect. This is how we intend the lots to be draining. So the comment that came in that was a good clarification of exactly what we were trying to accomplish. Okay, so that's it for stormwater. One of the last topics we'll go through is the utility requirements, and we'll go through these in a lot of detail. We also have Mike Criddle and Scott Jernigan here with Jacobs Engineering. That's our consultant that's been helping us with a lot of these things that can help with some of these answers on utilities. The utility and willingness capabilities letter is a communication tool to confirm, document the understanding between the developer and the utility provider that the utility service is available and will be provided to the development, subject to certain terms and conditions of the developer must meet as referenced in the letter. The willingness and capabilities letter is also notice to the County Commission and Planning and Zoning Department that utility is willing and able to serve the proposed development subject to certain terms and conditions. So what our response to this is, we've been talking a lot about this for quite some time now, and during prior communications with utility companies, it was requested that we explicitly specify exactly what we need to see for our ability our written report for the ability to serve. So the added text, and we'll show in just a second, it was added to add this clarification that has been requested in the past. So it's standard planning and engineering practice to evaluate the level of service for all infrastructure impacted by new and development. So when you deal with the three kind of pillars of infrastructure that deal with development, you got traffic, drainage, and utilities. And those three pillars, those things affect things outside of just the development itself. So when we start evaluating all the level of service of all three of those things, it's really about looking at the health, safety, and welfare of the surrounding community. And so it's a very important tool that we evaluate all these infrastructure things, utilities included, for level of service. Next comment, the Alabama Department of Environmental Management is responsible for permitting and oversight of wastewater treatment facilities. We agree. We're not attempting in any way to regulate stormwater treatment facilities. We're evaluating the level of service available to serve the proposed development, which is within our regulatory authority and standard planning and engineering practices. If the information regarding the receiving wastewater treatment plant, ADM permit number, permitted capacity, and peak flows is being requested to evaluate the level of service and ability of this utility provider to serve the development. So we're not in any way trying to regulate the facility itself. We're just trying to evaluate what the level of service is. BCSS respectfully asserts that some of the proposed amendments seeking to regulate the provisions of service are beyond the authority of the county to regulate the subdivision land. For example, the permitting, capacity, operation, and maintenance of stormwater treatment facilities under the jurisdiction of ADM. The proposed revisions are within the legal authority given to the county to regulate the subdivision of property to establish development standards. We are not attempting to regulate the wastewater treatment facility. We're evaluating the level of service of all required infrastructure, including utilities, to ensure public infrastructure has the ability to serve the proposed development. And we'll talk about this a little bit more on the next couple of slides. So what our draft amendments have on this sewer and water are both very similar. That we want to understand where the infrastructure is, what size it is, where and on the wastewater side, what plant is receiving the wastewater to make sure that we have enough capacity to handle the new development from a level of service standpoint. And if the sewer is not currently adjacent to the site, provide engineering plans showing the proposed sewer expansion. It's very similar on the water side. It's just the location, what the flow and what the pressure is, just so we can understand what that water capacity is. Again, not really dictating design standards or anything that's going on outside the development. We're really just understanding the level of service of how a proposed development will be served. So the comment received on these was, at the time of preliminary plat application, the development design has not been finalized. Information pertaining to the number of lots, size of lots, lot layout, infrastructure design, infrastructure type, street layout, utility easements, et cetera, are not in final form and are subject to conditions or changes required by the Planning Commission. Therefore, the current Baldwin County subdivision regulation regarding the provisions of utility services are sufficient to establish the availability of utility services. Final utility design for improvements outside of the proposed development are completed after preliminary plat approval. So some clarification there. The preliminary plat application does establish the lot and street layout, lot size, and number of lots. So when you get a preliminary plat approval, you're getting your fundamental design of your subdivision approved. So there's a lot of things when we're evaluating level of service that preliminary plat is dictating. So we'll clarify that the necessary upgrades off-site don't have to be engineered plans, because the intent here with that statement is that if there are off-site improvements, just like we do with traffic and stormwater, if there are off-site improvements necessary to provide the adequate level of service to the development, we need to properly condition that approval at preliminary plat. So we just need to understand what has to be done to serve the development. It's not that we're dictating the operation and the maintenance of it. We just need to understand what has to happen to properly serve the development so we can condition it properly. That's why we're asking for that. So, but we will clarify, it was not the intent to have full engineering design. It was just to have enough detailed information about what has to happen to provide the necessary level of service for the development. State law gives the county authority to regulate the subdivision of land, but the grant of authority to regulate subdivision does not give the county the authority to dictate and or control the operation, management, and construction outside the land in which is being subdivided. Our response to this is state law gives the county authority to require standards for development standards for roadway, drainage, and utilities within the boundaries of the subdivision. We're not dictating or controlling the operation, management, or construction of utilities outside the boundaries of the subdivision. If improvements are needed for roadway, drainage, or utilities outside of the boundaries of the subdivision, it's the responsibility of the design engineer and or utility provider to provide the necessary studies and plan for improvements to provide the level of service needed for the subdivision. Again, this is all about making sure that we condition approvals properly to make sure these off-site improvements that are required for to meet the level of service are being met. Sanitary sewer systems. We had a provision in there for anything over 50 lots should be gravity systems instead of low pressure force mains. We're going to talk through this in a lot of detail here. So the comment received, this provision is internally inconsistent in that the first two sentences suggest that the use of gravity system is preferred but not required, while the last two sentences suggest that the using gravity system is required that can only be waived if the engineer can justify. So we agree that there is a little bit of inconsistency with those statements. We'll clarify that to say that it is a requirement unless a waiver is granted. Next comment was waiver should be granted by the county engineer instead of the planning commission. We agree. This we will correct this, that the county engineer is the one that has the should be granting this waiver. The next comment, the proposed amendments to the subdivision regulations purport to limit the use of low pressure sewer collection systems and the use of grinder pumps, which is a viable and proven system for the collection and transmission of wastewater treatment along with gravity sewer systems. In addition, in many areas there are subject to high levels of rain, wetland areas, and areas subject to flooding and or significant surface drainage. Gravity systems, which are open systems, utilize manholes and other components which are not completely enclosed, allowing inundation of stormwater into the wastewater collection system, resulting in significant increase in water in the system, which can result in sewer overflows. The design of the system should be left to the utility provider and the engineer of record, which will be ultimately responsible for its construction, operation, and maintenance in accordance with ADEM requirements. So the ability, there's some good points at the end of that, you know, there are situations where gravity system is not preferred. If you have a flood-prone area or things like that, or you know, the topography doesn't work. But we have that, you know, that's kind of the exception, not the norm. So we want to write the regulation for the normal condition, and then have a waiver process, which we have in there, that allows the county engineer to grant a waiver should those conditions exist on the site. You know, the use of gravity systems in developments is a standard engineering practice. It's more reliable and is maintained by the utility provider, and also reduces short-term and long-term costs to the homeowners. If you all remember, we talked about this during the last public hearing, that you know, there's a tipping point when you have low pressure and gravity that you know, once you have enough lots, it becomes more costly for each individual homeowner on the initial install cost for low pressure systems. You know, the long-term operation and maintenance cost is definitely more costly to the homeowner on all accounts, because they're, and we'll go through that in a second. But just so to clarify what we're trying to accomplish with this regulation, to give an example, when you have a typical development, you know, you have your private property, which is all the new lots that are being constructed, and you have your public space, which is right of way or open space or something like that. So under the current regulations, it allows pretty much anything, and so when you have these low pressure systems, each lot has its own pump. So the only thing that's out in the public area is a pipe itself. And what it does, it pumps everything out and those pumps that are on each individual lot pressurize the system and are essential in the operation of the overall system. So what that means is, like, you have all of your mechanical systems are off in the private space and not in the public area. And the only thing that's in the public area is just a pipe. So this is a easy graphic to understand how that system is kind of configured. So you see under a pressurized system, you have out in the public space, you see the property line there on the right side of the image. The only thing that's out in the public space is your force main. All the mechanical systems of that kind of system is on the private property owner's side. So power cost, operation and maintenance, and just everything about that is on the private side, not the public side. And so it puts a lot of burden on the homeowner long term. So what that means, using my standard 40-acre development that I always use, how that works is for a low pressure system, you have all your force main pipes that are installed with the development. And then as the homes are all built out, you end up with, in this case, 135 grinder pumps out there. So there you have a lot of mechanical systems that are outside of the public realm that are on these private lots that are essential for that system to work. And so you amplify the potential failure points dramatically with that type of system. So what we're proposing, again, going back to the private space, the public space, and what we're proposing is to have some type of gravity system. Basically what we want is the wastewater to gravity off of those private lots out into the public space. And once it gets out into the public space, the design engineer and the utility company can decide what is the best and most cost-effective way of dealing with it to that point. So what we're really focusing on is just getting it to gravity out into the public space so that the utility providers are managing the system because they're the experts, and that the responsibility of maintaining that system should go out to the utility companies, not the individual homeowners. And then what it does, it flows down typically to one pump station and pumps itself out. So a comparison graphic is the proposed system, as you see, on the private side, there's no mechanical systems out there. It's simply a gravity line. It gravities out in the public space. And then once it gets out there, the engineer and the utility provider can decide what the best way of dealing with it is. And that's what we're trying to accomplish. So there's a lot of different ways that can be accomplished. The most common way is that everything gravities to a centralized pump station, usually one per development, unless it's a very large development, and then it pumps it out into the system, to the existing pipe network. In areas like North Baldwin County where there's some topographical challenges, they use a step system, which is basically it gravities to a point, has a small booster pump, pumps it up, lets it gravity down to the next point, and kind of keeps going like that. So the difference in that is, when you look at the comparison, is like now, with the development, you come in and you have the gravity pipes, just theoretically they do gravity to one pump station. They have all the gravity pipes, one centralized pump station, so when there's severe weather events, ongoing operation and maintenance, we're maintaining 1 point instead of 135 points. And that pumps it out into the system. So, and just to be clear, we're not trying to dictate or regulate what happens with utilities and wastewater outside the development. Once it hits that pump and leaves the site, that's up to the utility provider how they want to operate and maintain everything from there. So we're not trying to accomplish gravity sewer outside of developments. We're just trying to say inside of new developments it should be gravity sewer. Some questions came up about what does it mean to be not feasible or unfeasible from an engineering standpoint. Obviously, especially in North Baldwin County, you have a lot of conditions where the house pad, the house may be lower than the street that accesses it. Obviously, gravity doesn't work uphill, so you would have to have a pump station that would be a qualified waiver, exemption if you have that kind of condition. As I mentioned earlier, if there's flood-prone areas where it may just not be best engineering practice to have a gravity system because of infiltration concerns, those could be approved as low pressure as well. But again, those would be the exception, not the rule. We want to write the regulation for the norm and then have a waiver process for the exception. So that's it about sewer. The next utility piece is about broadband. We had several comments about, if you recall, we were requiring conduit to be installed if fiber is not available. That way, if when fiber becomes available, they would have the conduit in the ground to be able to pull the wire. There's two different ways you can look at it. This was really put in there because there was a lot of complaints coming into the commission, into the highway department from neighborhoods where the fiber companies are coming and really tearing up yards and doing things to install it after the fact. But there's a lot of good points were made that there are a lot of other options beyond fiber for broadband connectivity through wireless and satellite options. There's no way of saying that the conduit we require to put in would be exactly what the fiber company needs. So while it's a good idea to put in there and it would be something to consider, it's certainly something that doesn't really affect the development outcome. Just know that if we don't put something in there, we're probably going to continue to get calls from upset residents when the yards are getting torn up and stuff. But this is certainly something that there's a lot of pros and cons in both ways, and it may be one of those things that's just better left as currently written and just leave it be. I think this is the final comment on utilities. There was just a typo on the top of talking about drainage and utility easements. The text and the little table there conflict with one another, so we agree with that. We will clarify that to make it very clear what's required there. So the last section was enforcement. I'm not going to go through all the comments because we can kind of cover this in a general statement. But there were a lot of different comments questioning the policing powers that the enforcement section would give. Specific comments question why an alleged violation would initiate enforcement activities prior to being confirmed by county staff. So just to clarify the intent of what we're trying to accomplish here is that we have enforcement language in all of our ordinances and regulations. We're trying to standardize that across all of them so that we have a unified and consistent way of interpreting and enforcing the regulations that we have. The comments about clarifying when the violation begins certainly would need to be addressed, and there's a couple other clarification comments, and those would need to be addressed both in the zoning ordinance and the subdivision regulations. But certainly the violation would not start until it was confirmed by county staff that yes, the violation did indeed occur. Like, just because someone calls and says there's a violation doesn't automatically mean there's a violation. It would have to be confirmed before we start the enforcement process. So some other comments were there about didn't refer to violations to the county attorney and legal staff, and that's like I said, we're already doing this in a lot of the same exact enforcement measures in all the zoned parts of the county, and some areas of unzoned parts of the county. So everything does pass through the county attorney before any kind of legal actions begin. So we can add some clarification on that, but really what we're trying to do is just have consistent enforcement language. That way we know we're all operating off the same playbook of how we enforce our regulations. So if the commission feels this is unnecessary, we can certainly continue on with the current enforcement section of the subdivision regulations, but it's very advantageous to have the same set of rules for enforcement across all of our ordinances to have some consistency. So that is all of the comments and our responses. Mr. Chairman, I think our next thing on the schedule, we were going to open up for any public comments, and I can go back through slides if there's any questions about that.
All right, before we get started with the speaking for the public, you got 3 minutes to speak. You got 5 minutes if you're speaking on behalf of a group. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on that. I know a lot of y'all, we've been here and this is a great thing, so I just wanted to say that at the beginning. The first person, Mr. Faust, Tommy Faust, would you want to come up and speak? I've got 9 people to speak, so just want to give you a heads up.
I never dreamed I'd be first, so that's great. I just want to let you know, I'm a local banker here in Baldwin County, lived here my whole life, know all of you guys, appreciate your service to our county. I come as a father of 4 young adults who are looking to buy homes in Baldwin County. 2 of the 4 cannot afford to live in Baldwin County right now. They're living at home or they're living in a tiny apartment and making it work, but they cannot afford to buy a home in Baldwin County. So anything that impacts the cost to our youth, we're doing a disservice to our community if we don't take care of them and make sure that those opportunities are there. As a banker, we have an affordable housing crisis in the country, and we definitely have one here in Baldwin County. It's well documented, and anything that impacts the cost for particularly the high density developments will be negative. From a banker's perspective, I see it every day. People coming in to qualify for houses, and a lot of them just are out of the market. There's nothing out there for them. I appreciate the presentation today by the staff. I thought a lot of headway was made on a lot of issues that could have made a major impact, except for one. And I believe that that one issue is something that's working great, that has been really the lifeblood of development in the county, has been the sewer system and its ability to thrive. They're experts. They outperform the municipalities in the county as far as their environmental record, without a doubt. It's not even close. And changing how we run those systems, I think, could be detrimental. It will be costly, and everything flows to the consumer. The common man pays the bill. It's just like a tax. Everything we do to increase the cost is going to flow down to me and you as taxpayers and consumers. So that being said, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. I've seen nothing in the public eye, news, privately, through the developers or anything else that should be an alarming thing over the way things are working right now, and it's working very well. So that's what I had to say, and I appreciate y'all listening today.
Thank you, Tommy, for coming. Next is Mr. Tucker, Dorsey.
Going from the bottom of the list to the top. Again, thank y'all for your service. Appreciate it. Hope we're all happy with the election results. As good Republicans, that we had an outstanding turnout last week. 80% of Baldwin Countyans voted for the conservative ticket. And the hot wash on the result of the election last week is that people are excited and ecstatic about less regulation, the deregulation of our bureaucracies. And the stock market has shown its enthusiasm in free market economics that's going to happen under this administration. These regulations are in complete opposition to that. We continue to regulate, drive up price, as Mr. Faust alluded to. The market knows what it wants and what it demands. It's not the county's job to tell people what they want to buy. We have 50% of our education system is in free or reduced lunch. People cannot afford housing. Our goal with subdivision regulations right now should be to figure out how we can reduce the cost of housing, open up market economics, and let the market decide what they want to buy, and let the people in this room that are in this industry, 12% of your workforce in this industry, figure out how to make that happen. But you keep putting these burdens and these costs on it, you're driving people out, and we're going to keep trying to figure out how to work, but you're just taking housing away from more people in this county. And the economics of it is really what my argument is. It doesn't affect me personally. I just think we're doing our people a disservice in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Judy Smith?
Hi, I'm Judy Smith. I am with Darrell Horton, but I'm calling on my 26 years experience as a closing agent to come and bring to your attention the affordability of housing. So over my 26 years as a closing agent, I've done thousands of closings across the county. A lot of those were first-time home buyers. A lot of those were FHA loans. 3.5% down payment. A lot of these down payments are being gifted by family members. A lot of these loans are being co-signed by parents and grandparents. In our closing, we are discussing monthly payments. We are discussing increases in insurance, increases that will come with county taxes when your property value increases, your FHA premium that you have to pay on a monthly basis that the government requires you to pay for the life of the loan. So one of my closings, we're talking about the first payment date. Well, it moved on from that because they had to scrape all their money together for the down payment. We started talking about the default date. So, which is not something you want to hear at a closing. It's like, what's my default date so I can scrape all my money together to make my first payment? I've also seen couples in their 60s buying their first home on an FHA loan. So, I appreciate everything that y'all are trying to do, but you have got to keep your first-time home buyers in mind. They're not here because they're at work. You talk about open spaces that they can enjoy. Mom and dad are working, kids are in daycare. They're hoping to have just enough time to walk along the sidewalks. They don't have enough time to spend in these open areas that you are enforcing upon them. Let your home buyers buy what they want. You have great competitors out here that are putting out different things on the market. Let them go out and choose what they want. They may or may not want all of these open areas, but they can choose and give them that option to choose. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Bills, Mr. Bills? Miss Bills, sorry. I knew I was going to mess that up.
I get called Andy, so.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like, let me just go with Mr. Sorry.
Well, my name's Andy Bills. I am with Deer Horton as well, and I get the fun job as I represent their HOAs. So with that being said, I represent 21 Deer Horton HOAs where I'm either sitting on the board or I am the board president. I work alongside several developers, whether it's 4-Star 68V, and I work alongside 20 other communities where I'm heavily involved in all those communities because we are building in there. So I talk to these owners personally. I've also turned over 25 communities where I was fully invested sitting on the board with these homeowners. And then because I'm a glutton for punishment, I sit on the board of my own community. I will tell you in my own community, people aren't moving out. And the reason they're not moving out is we do have an HOA, but we don't want to be regulated. We don't want our dues to go up because we either can't afford it or they don't want to be regulated more. I will say me and my husband have lived in that community for 15 years. We've thought about moving out. We make great money. We don't want the interest rates, we don't want the dues, and we don't want the new regulations that are out there. I will tell you with homeowners, they're angry. And they don't want an HOA. They don't want to be regulated. And I will share with you that common area space, it's not utilized. Unless there's a pool in there, they're not utilizing it. It's meant for dogs to poop in. And then that's their biggest complaint after that, is where is my money going? Well, why am I paying this much for it to be mowed? We don't use it anyways. So then after I turn over, it's, well, we want to give this back to the city. Let the city regulate the common areas. Let them pay for it. Let them be responsible for the insurance. We're tired of it going up. Insurance has gone up within the past 2 years, 25% each year if there's a pool, and 10 to 15% if it's just a common area space. Grass, that has continued to go up. Whether it's mowing, whether it's landscaping, and now we're putting trees in here that they're going to be regulated. Most of these homeowners, they're either from here and they've lived here, and so they're not leaving their non-HOAs, or They're coming down, and they're coming down here to enjoy the beach, the warm weather, whether it was politics from where they're coming, but they're wanting to come down and enjoy. So once I turn these communities over, I'm turning them over as volunteers. These are people that are hardworking citizens. They're working 8 to 5. They might be working 2 or 3 jobs. They just want to live their lives, and they don't want to sit there and focus on reading all these regulations of, oh gosh, a beaver came and chopped down the tree as it did in Aventura, chopped down 10, and now we've got to figure out where to get funding, what are the regulations so that we're meeting all these requirements. They're not interested in that. They're not interested in getting in trouble because they're parking on the side of the road. They really just want to keep up with their nice neighborhoods and live a life. Now, the other thing I noticed was walking trails. They're not utilized at all. They're utilizing these sidewalks, and Judy made a really good point. Again, they're not utilizing it because the average American doesn't have time. I have 2 small kids. My kids are 8 and 12, and they go to Foley, 80% poverty. Talking more about Foley, the median in Foley, we're talking 60. Per capita, that's 33.5%. They can't afford it. They can't afford these new homes, and if you continue to raise the dues, raising the dues, you're raising the capital contribution as well, people aren't going to be afford to live here. People aren't going to want to leave here. So that's all I've got to say, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Ms. Chloe Kelly? Did I get that right? All right, thank you.
Hello, my name is Chloe Kelly, and I am here representing a group.
Okay. Yeah. 5 minutes.
So I first wanted to say thank you to each of you for serving and for the proposed revisions that were highlighted today. Much of them reflected concerns that myself and many of the people here in the room today had expressed, so we're very much appreciative of all of that. That being said, I'd like to respectfully request that similarly how we had the workshop today and the opportunity to review the prior document, that the revised document will also be circulated for a comment period, because a lot of what was highlighted today referenced future revisions or clarity that will come in the next document, but it wasn't actually outlined on the screen. And I think it'd be really helpful for the individuals in the room to just have the opportunity to review that and provide any additional feedback before it goes to a formal public hearing. That being said, in Section 13, Article 13, which was the enforcement, I know that we did not go through that, but there were 13 sections within that document that I know I personally submitted comments on, because there was a variety of enforcement details that were either not clear or discretionary or had referenced violation and fine language that didn't necessarily I don't believe articulates what the intention of the county is. An example of that is a violation could be issued if somebody simply calls in a potential violation, and I don't think that's the intention. I think the county is going to want to verify that if a violation is actually in place. That being said, there were also some changes that I think being able to see the revised proposed language would be incredibly helpful. Again, really appreciate y'all taking the time and the staff taking the time to implement and present all of these changes to us. Again, I think I speak for everyone. I know I'm a resident of Baldwin County, but to give you some information, the median household income in 2023 was just under $73,000. So those are your average constituents. And I had run some numbers, and if you assume that that family has zero debt and $1,000 in monthly expenses, if they were to make a 20% down payment, which apparently FHA is more common these days, but if they were to make a 20% down payment at 6% APR, which currently the actual APR rate is like 6.9% on a 30-year loan, their maximum purchase budget is $212,000. I don't know where you can live or where you can go buy a home in the county today for $212,000. So when you talk about increasing costs, which I know a lot of things feel good and they sound good and they're good in idea and concept, but when you look at the financial obligations that that presents and the impacts that'll have, I think it's important to talk about what the average constituent in the county can actually go afford as a household, not an individual, and think about those people, because that's who it's ultimately going to affect. I own my home. It's not going to affect me. A lot of people in the room are in the same situation as me, but the individuals young people that are looking to purchase a home, young families that maybe need to purchase more space, individuals that are retiring. Those are the people that are going to be impacted, and I don't think the intention is to do a disservice to them, and unfortunately, some of these changes will. Thank you.
No, thank you. Mr. Justin Palmer?
I represent a group also. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, for this opportunity to have some input. We really appreciate it and look forward to hopefully having some more input as we go. A couple of our things sound like they got addressed. The family subdivision provision is going to be left as is. I guess first and foremost, I would ask that if we could begin the edits with the actual document that's approved now, and whatever's being placed moving forward be placed in that document properly. As I sent out to y'all, page 28 alone had multiple language that showed up in black that was not in the previously approved document, which essentially means it was failed to be identified as a change in red. That was littered throughout the document. So I just asked that if we start with the original document and then include the topics that we're addressing as we go, as opposed to taking what I would call butchered document and continuing to butcher it further, because the advertising by law has to be identical. If you change even a tittle after the advertising, then it's invalid, as it can be considered illegal. So we want to be sure and stay away from that. We start with the original document. To move on, sounds like one of the topics that we were really optimistic about, it was actually the first topic of the last meeting the previous planning director called in December of 2023, is the topic of minor subdivisions. And there is very clear reasoning as to why this is necessary. We currently have in our subregs the definition of development, which was proposed to be changed. I understand they're proposing to not change that now. We appreciate that. But when you apply that with the current definition of subdivision, you get subdivision is the development and division of a lot of land. So in our current regs, the word subdivision requires development to be taking place. Well, there are subdivisions happen all the time with no development taking place. We actually just finished up one that took us 8 months to accomplish on a 5-acre piece of property that's out in the Perdido neighborhood area that's almost at the state line. Total value is $46,000 for the property. The lady has a mobile home there that's worth about $50,000 on the tax sheet. She wanted to divide off a 1/2 acre for a friend of hers that was in a bad situation in Pensacola and was in dire need of somewhere to move quickly. The plan was for her to cut a piece of property off, the lady move in her mobile home and move on with life. When we file the application with the county, staff runs the development checklist as a matter of procedure on every subdivision that happens, and the reasoning they tell me when you ask why is because a subdivision is a development, which is actually not true. A subdivision is not a development by our current definition. A subdivision is the development and division of land, and it describes a whole bunch more stuff, but they're not the same. And so, as a matter of having a vessel to accomplish minor subdivision scenarios without subjecting people to things like engineered drainage studies, lot design constraints, fire flow, ISO reports, utility extensions, widening of pavement. We were told this lady was going to have to dedicate 20 feet of right-of-way to the county when she's not breaking a piece of dirt in this process. We have a problem with the rules and the avenue that's in place, and it has to do with the definition. If we included a minor subdivision definition, which our proposed suggested text as per staff's request would be a subdivision of 5 lots or less fronting on an existing county-maintained road that does not require the planning or construction of public streets, public roads, public drainage structures, construction of buildings, public use areas, placement of extension of public utilities. If there's no development taking place and the lady wants to split a piece off to let her friend have an affordable, quick method of housing, then we should allow a avenue for that. Furthermore, this subjects planning staff. I sat in Frank's office, or Jay's office with Jay and Frank, and was told that, well, we won't apply that one, we will apply that one, we won't apply that one. And then I was told by staff, after that meeting, we got to go get a fire flow ISO report. We go track down, they say go to North Baldwin Utilities. We go to them, they're not even over it. The fire department's over it. We get the report from them, send it in, they accept it, no engineer review. It's just a very subjective thing, and it creates a selective enforcement environment at the staff level. And so I'm asking for the county commission to instruct staff, because we've requested it very, very, very clearly, to instruct staff to let's have conversation about what they call unintended consequences of, which is what I was just told here in this room, unintended consequences of the minor subdivisions. And let's compare those unintended consequences to the $13,000 in cost to subdivide $4,500 worth of land. Thank y'all for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Justin. Cat Holiday?
Hello, my name is Kat Holliday, and I represent a group. I currently serve as a board member on more than 15 homeowners associations here in Baldwin County.
Say that again, Ms. Holloway. What did you just say? I'm sorry.
I currently serve as a board member for more than 15 homeowners associations here in Baldwin County.
Thank you.
I've served on many homeowners association boards over the years, and also managed numerous communities in my 15 years in this industry. I do appreciate the consideration that you've taken in addressing the comments and the feedback received thus far, but there are still some issues with these regulations from an HOA perspective. As a board, we are tasked with setting a fiscally responsible budget for the nonprofit entity. This is not a small task. We face growing tensions and dissatisfied residents because the cost in our communities for maintenance, repairs, insurance, and management are continually rising. We have no choice when this happens but to raise assessments or risk added liability. When assessments are raised, often homeowners stop paying because they disagree with the fees being charged, or simply because they can't afford it anymore. When people stop paying and the association then can't pay its bills, the neighborhood begins to decline. When the appearance declines, property values plummet. Plummeting property values leads to other adverse events that extend beyond the neighborhood and into the rest of the community. One of the largest line items on all of my association's budgets is landscaping maintenance. This maintenance cost is directly tied to the square footage of landscaped area required to be mowed, edged, trimmed, blown, pruned, fertilized, and otherwise treated. Simply put, the larger the area there is to maintain, the higher the cost. The current open spaces in all of my communities don't get used. They range in size from very small to multiple acres. In all of my drive-throughs, meetings, and even my own personal experience in my neighborhood, I've not seen use of these areas. So who is asking for more open space inside of their communities? And why isn't it used? The studies that they mentioned, where were those studies conducted? I say all of this to give you some insight as to what existing boards are facing in their communities. But what does all that have to do with the specific document you're considering? The proposed regulations on open space requirements directly and significantly increases the assessments in communities developed in the future. Smaller neighborhoods with larger open space, in theory, does sound really great. But in reality, it means fewer homeowners sharing a larger cost, with the same issue of lack of use. By far, the most common complaint that I receive from residents and potential residents looking to buy in communities is that dues are too high. So making them higher with these regulations will force many potential new neighbors to seek other areas. Making them higher with these regulations will price out many home buyers from the community. Making them higher with these proposed regulations threatens to start a vicious cycle of increased chances for delinquencies, which in turn have to be budgeted for by the paying homeowners, thereby further increasing assessments and leading to the downward spiral that I mentioned previously. New communities will be no different. The proposed general open space requirement flowchart and the calculation presented today is somewhat reasonable, but I think clarifications should still be added. I'm thinking in my head of a specific open space in a very popular neighborhood off of 181, about 1 acre or larger. The space is an island surrounded by homes directly facing that open space, something encouraged by the proposed regulations. The space has sidewalks around all 4 sides and connects to other sidewalks for accessibility. It's exactly what's being asked for in these proposed regulations. In the 4.5 years that I have personally lived in this community, not once have I seen anyone use this acre open space for anything other than illegal parking, dumping, or homeowners allowing their dogs to run illegally off-leash, which potentially poses additional threats and liability to the association. So the cost of these areas is still a major concern, and I think outweighs the need for the sizes of open space requirements. And I'm just wondering if the county is willing to hold the deed for these common areas and bear the cost of the maintenance for these open spaces. So I strongly urge the commission to consider that these broad stroke open space regulations significantly impact the dues for our homeowners associations. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lisa Burke? Ms. Lisa, and I didn't do this at the beginning, and I apologize in advance, but if you're here to represent a group, just tell me what group. That kind of gives us an idea of what group are you representing, just to help to clarify things. So
thank you. Thank you for your time. From 2018 to 2023, Baldwin County wage growth was 34.31% versus 27.78% for the state of Alabama and 27.25% for the entire country. This achievement by the citizens of Baldwin County has made possible through the increased diversification of the county's economy, high quality of public education, and the availability of diverse and affordable housing. Several prominent companies have recently started new locations in Baldwin County or are expanding operations in Baldwin County, as well as in other neighboring counties due to the highly skilled and well-educated Baldwin County citizens. The 5 main requirements companies look for when selecting a community for a new project: logistics, workforce, real estate, business and tax climate, as well as utilities. Of the top 5 requirements, workforce is both the main component and the most challenging to achieve. The key aspects of the workforce availability are high-quality education and affordable housing. Since 2001, Baldwin County's GDP has grown from $3.1 billion to $10.8 billion. During that time, the current willing and able letter format and process has created a winning formula built on seamless integration among area utilities and effective application by the county. During this time, per capita county income has increased from $24,600 in 1998 to $56,700 in 2022, leading to a substantial improvement in the quality of life, job growth, expansion of the medical services community, and the ability of graduating Baldwin County students to be able to live, work, worship here in their local communities. However, the economic improvements since 1998 is now at risk, as the property rate for all of Baldwin County residents, the poverty rate for all of Baldwin County residents has increased from a historical low of 8.9% in 2020 to 12.4% in 2022. This represents a 39% increase in a 2-year period. For this reason and others, we respectfully request the proposed subdivision amendments be withdrawn to ensure the availability of affordable homes and the continued prosperity for the Baldwin counties and all of its citizens, not just some citizens. In addition to these comments, please reference the written report Baldwin County Sewer Service filed on October 31st. Thank you all. If I had 3 more minutes, we could talk about sewer service versus gravity, grinder pumps, but thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. That's it on our people that's here to speak, so commissioners, y'all got any questions? Do you want to, yeah, please, come up and speak. Sorry, I didn't.
Sure, no worries.
You got 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, sir. So I do represent a group, but hopefully I won't take 5.
What group do you represent?
I'm a president for the Baldwin County Road Builders.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
yeah, I don't have any fancy stats or anything like that. I've been a Baldwin County resident for, I guess now more than half my life. When I moved here, I weighed 185 pounds, had a full head of hair, no kids. Now my kids are out, don't have any hair, don't weigh 185 pounds. So I've seen a few changes with me personally and throughout the county, and you know, some good, some bad. I'm also, we're in the sand business up in Baldwin. I'm also a qualifying broker for real estate companies, so I see a lot of different aspects of what goes on and what these regulations pertain to. But you know, put the hay down where the horses can get it. On my way here this morning, you pass this brand new, beautiful school on Highway 59, doing great things, great, wonderful things, putting out blue collar jobs. Well, guess what? The construction people that are here today are needing these people to work for us, and they can't afford it. They know that they can't afford it today when they graduate from this brand new school that we just spent tens of millions of dollars on. They're going to go somewhere else. These regulations don't help that. They don't help these costs come down that you've heard. Again, I don't have any fancy stats, but I just know that they can't afford it. And I'm telling you that as I stand here. So be careful in what you do with sweeping changes, and know that there's an economic impact to it. And I would advise you to please study the economic impacts of the final document prior to implementation. So whether that means hiring a economic guru from whoever knows where, let's understand this, you know. And also on the real estate side, we manage a bunch of rental properties, single family residents, some commercial properties, some warehouse space. On the residential side, the grinder pumps aren't the concern that I hear the most. It's air conditions and roof leaks. That's where you get your biggest concern, your biggest complaints, and your biggest maintenance issues, and your biggest cost to your homeowners. So be careful on the grinder pumps. You know, I get what you're saying. Just make sure that the intent is directed in the right direction. So anyway, with that being said, I'm not going to use my full time. Know what you're doing. I appreciate what you guys do. I know it's a thankless job. You take a lot of shots from a lot of different people, but I really do appreciate what y'all are doing. I think you're doing a good job, and just please consider the comments that were made today. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak that didn't sign up?
Yeah, I appreciate it. I actually didn't sign up. I didn't intend to speak, but I also represent a group, and it's the group that's not part of this group. Specifically, it's not in their wheelhouse, so there's really no one here to represent them but me. I feel like I'd just like to suggest that there's a balance that's trying to be met here between the people that do wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, go to work, they come home exhausted, we all do, and you have 11 hours to enjoy your life wherever that might be. And overwhelmingly, the people in this community have adopted zoning for various reasons, but mainly is to protect a quality of life that can be eroded in different ways. I don't think that this industry is doing that, but I think that what we're trying to do is find a balance between these two groups where we can all kind of come home from whatever it is we're doing, blazing the trail, trying to make a living, and enjoy some bit of a quality of life. I don't know, that's different for everybody, but I think what we've seen today, I agree with all of them. I think they're all in an effort not to limit or restrict the way anybody might generate income or make a living, but to find a balance that we can all be happy with, because we're all raising our families here. And anyway, I would just like to represent the other group. That's all I've got, but I appreciate what y'all do. Yeah.
Mr. Key, will you state your name? That way we'll have it for record.
I'm Reed Key.
Thank you, Mr. Reed.
Thank y'all.
Anybody else? Jay, you want to?
Well, real quick before we move on, I'd like to, we have Mike Criddle and Scott Jernigan from Jacobs here that maybe could address some of the comments about the sewer requirements and some of the requirements we have as it relates to cost and what does it do to affect. So Mike or Scott, which one of you guys are going to talk?
Hey, good morning. Scott Jernigan with Jacobs Engineering out of Pensacola. So we can talk about sewer or grinders or gravity. I think first I'd like to see specifically if you guys have any questions that we can start with that and use that to lead the discussion where we need to go.
Commissioners, anybody?
I got a quick question. I've heard, about the cost and everything else. Who is supposed to absorb that cost if nothing happens? It's still going to happen. Who's supposed to absorb that cost? Your HOAs say, they can't afford this, can't afford that. If it's maintaining your detention ponds so that you don't have flooding in the neighborhood, who's supposed to absorb that cost if it's not, That's my question, because I get it all the time, my detention pond needs cleaning out, and it does, it's flooding. But it's not the county's responsibility to go out there and clean it out, and in the same way with, some of these buffers we're asking for. We've got roads that are built, subdivisions that are built beside dirt roads, and we've got one particular one, I get at least, 10 a week, about dust. You got to stop this dust. We have done everything we can except for going out and paving the road, and we can't just keep paving roads like that just because, the development has caused, this problem, and now we're stuck with it, and we're getting all these complaints, and those people don't have a good quality of life because they're sitting there absorbing all the dust from the dirt roads. It's, the cost is somewhere. And I do realize, yes, it is getting more costly to build, but, I'll use an example. My house, I built it in 1979. It cost me right at almost $40-something thousand. Today, that same house is almost $350,000. Inflation has hit. And nothing's changed. The same footprint and everything else. It's just the cost of supplies and everything else is being, added to it. But, that's not the regulations that are driving up cost. They're there to protect, the citizen and, give him a little bit better quality of life. That's my take so far what I've been hearing. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I guess the question that I have is, what is the cost? What is the average cost for this that they don't want when it comes to this gravity flow type sewage? What would be a cost? Does anybody have it costs what it's going to cost the developer? I mean, I hear it's going to go off, but what my mind is telling me is interest rates and insurance is what's killing people. And I think with the new president that's getting in, it's going to make a big difference. It's going to take a while. That's just my 2 cents, but I can't, somebody please tell me what a gravity fed is going to cost the developer. I haven't got that answer yet, so I don't know.
So I think somebody mentioned it in one of the comments that there's a break point where if you have, a 50-lot subdivision and you're developing a gravity system, you've got that infrastructure cost divided by 50 lots. And then you can compare that to the infrastructure cost for 50 grinder stations. And, in general, a force main is at 3 foot of depth. It's going to be cheaper to install than a gravity main. So once you get to, there's a break point, and I don't know where it is, in terms of number of lots, where you distribute the cost for the gravity system over a large number of lots, it comes down. Your grinder system, per house, the grinder cost is the grinder cost. And as an example, we're doing a community retrofit in Okaloosa County right now. It's a 100-lot subdivision, and the grinder cost for each house is roughly $18,000. So that includes the pump station itself, the line from the pump station to the force main at the right-of-way, an allowance for an electrical system improvement. So if it's a 220 and they've got to run a new circuit, we have that in there. And then we also have the septic tank crushing and abatement. So just using that as a rule of thumb or using that for a discussion today, you've got the cost for those units, you've got the cost for the piping in the road, which it can be looked at as a lump sum cost divided amongst the number of lots in the subdivision. So you compare that to your gravity system and see where the break-even point is on which one is less for a subdivision. I think another thing that probably needs to be considered in that discussion is with a grinder station, it's mechanical equipment, so it has a service life. You need to look at that, which is going to be in most cases the homeowner's responsibility. And in addition, it's a very small cost, but there's an electrical cost that goes with it as well. So you want to consider all of those when you're looking at that, as a total package to do a comparison.
I have a question. And it's not a matter of if, it's just when we're going to get a major storm event in this area. When there are extensive power outages, unless the homeowner has some kind of generator in place, does that put them out of commission if they don't, if they have a grinder pump versus it being a gravity where you could have generators on the station out there? I'm trying to figure out, because there was a lot of issues during Hurricane Sally, and I'm just trying to figure out, there's going to be a two-part question. I'm not an expert in that at all. I just tried to figure something out in my head. But from what these slides that are in the packets that were on here, that was shown to everyone, moving the grinder pump, you could still have the grinder pump, but it could be moved out into the right-of-way. Is that correct?
You could if the...
I thought that was what was, or was that just an illustration?
I think that was just an illustration.
Yeah. It's just an illustration, because you wouldn't want to do that.
I don't know of any communities we work with where...
Because that puts it on private property. Normally, the norm is to put it on private property, and it becomes the private property owner's responsibility, regardless of, just like you got to replace your own air conditioner, you got to replace your own everything else, right?
Yes, ma'am. And to clarify there, we have clients that have, municipal clients that have maintenance agreements with grinder station communities that those homeowners pay a premium on their bill, and it covers a level of maintenance for their grinder station. You raise
so there's a fee, an extra fee involved for
a connection fee and a monthly service fee.
Okay. Versus a gravity sewer service normally wouldn't have that kind of a fee associated?
No, ma'am, not a maintenance fee for a grinder station.
A what?
Not a maintenance fee for a grinder pump station. So your gravity's bill would be,
Because you own the grinder.
you own the grinder. Yes, ma'am. Like
You
I
wouldn't
said.
pay yourself a fee to maintain it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's,
Oh, okay, so sorry.
understanding the cost, I guess my biggest question was electricity.
Which is, yes, ma'am.
versus-
So if a homeowner does not have a private generator, they would have the volume in that basin. And, you know, if they took a long shower and power was off for 3 or 4 days, it is going to reach the top of the station and begin to overflow. Or if it's, you know, got a sealed top, it's going to back up in the house.
We can address that specifically the block.
We'll probably have another meeting, so I want to keep this like this. This is just something I wanted to ask, and we'll probably have another one, and if we do, I'll let y'all talk about it then.
This is out.
Yeah. Well, anyway, anything else you want to say, sir?
No, sir, like I said, I'm really just here to answer questions you guys have to help, you know, clarify some of the discussions that staff has had.
Yeah. You got anything, Jeff? Commissioner Ball?
I just want to make sure that I'm understanding that what it's being proposed is not to eliminate grinder pumps. It's a preference, it's an option, and then you can, based on the size of the development, and also based on the terrain. So if you're in an area where it doesn't work, so that's totally understandable. I mean, we understand water doesn't flow uphill or whatever goes in them pipes. It's encouraging gravity fed due to, okay, since you're here as a consultant, what is your opinion of encouraging gravity fed versus grinder pump systems? Is that fair enough question?
Yes, ma'am. So in general, we see a lot more gravity collection systems than we do grinder pump stations, low pressure systems. That being said, I have designed low pressure systems for a new construction and for neighborhood retrofits. One of the things that we learned with grinders on a retrofit, and this is kind of a tangent, but we'll discuss what we're here, is part of that is educating the homeowners on what you need to put in the grinders, what you don't need to put in the grinders, what does maintenance for it look like, what do you do when you see the red light come on or whatever the warning sign is. It helps the utility or the entities that are maintaining those systems to do it makes their job easier, and it gives the homeowner less risk of the station failure or a clog or a blockage or whatever may happen. So in general, my personal thought is if gravity is available, it's easier for the homeowners.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have any other questions for you. I don't think the other commissioners do either.
All right, thank you.
Well, thank you.
So follow up on a couple other notes I made with comments that were said. One of the things I think that should be really clear today is that one of our main goals and one of the things we're really working to accomplish, and all the feedback we got will certainly help accomplish this, is to make sure we provide very clear and consistent regulations that is important for everyone involved. That's important for planning and zoning staff. That's important for the development community. It's important for the planning commission, as Reed mentioned. It's important to the county commission, and it's important to the citizens of Baldwin County. So we want to understand exactly what our rule book is and exactly what we need to do. And that's one of the reasons it's very important to get this done and get it done as quick as possible, is that the vagueness and unclarity of the current regulations are really causing a lot of issues. So you heard a lot of comments about clear and consistent interpretation. That's one of our main goals and one of the things we will be accomplishing with this amendment. Second, just a quick comment about the discussion about increased HOA cost. Again, as Commissioner Gruber said, there's already common areas being included in these developments. The detention ponds, there's other things that are already required that are common areas that are already the responsibility of the HOA to maintain. What we're adding is simple grassed open areas. So the only additional cost would be mowing grass, right? And they should already be mowing grass in the ponds and things anyway. The landscaping requirements are very minimal. We're encouraging native vegetation that doesn't require a lot of maintenance. What we really want is just some buffering and some tree cover just to, again, protect the livability of those neighborhoods. So it's not anticipated to be really any long-term cost for that. Once they're in, they're there, and after that 2-year period, we're not going to continue to look at them. One person mentioned a beaver taking down a thing in Jubilee Farms, I believe it was. Well, if it's outside that bond period, they don't need any approval from us to go decide what they want to do with that tree. They could simply remove it. We would not be regulating the long-term maintenance of those landscape areas. That's not within our ability to do or our desire to do. And that's not, our regulations do not require that in any way. Some comments about reviewing the document as a whole as it's redrafted. This is just the work session that we discussed at the last public hearing. Depending on the direction we get from the commission today, we will redraft the amendments to include the comments potentially, and then we'll go through an advertisement period where that document is available and for full inspection. So that comment, we just haven't got to that point yet, but the document will absolutely be available for review in its completeness. The minor subdivisions that was discussed, Frank and I have talked about this a lot. All of the cities that I'm aware of that also, the county removed this from the regulations many years ago. All the cities did because there's a lot of unintended consequences as you start stacking these minor subdivisions on unimproved roads, and eventually you get a whole lot of lots with no improvements that becomes a health and safety issue for the citizens of Baldwin County. So there was a reason that was removed a long time ago, and I don't think anyone is considering, even on staff, would advise that to be added back in. There's just a lot of unintended consequences that come with a very broad statement like that. I believe that's all the things that I had notes to make a comment on. But so just going forward, the last piece of the agenda today is what we would recommend as a path forward to the county commission, and we would look for you all to give us some guidance on where to go from here. So what we would recommend is to address the comments that we went through in the presentation today, as we said, into the proposed amendments, redraft that document to include all those addressed comments and clarifications and things. If you all give us the direction to do that, we will do that. And then we would recommend that once those revised amendments are drafted, it'd be advertised as required by the Code of Alabama and the Baldwin County subdivision regulations. The advertisement period and schedule would be aligned to hold another public hearing on January 7th, which is, if you all recall, this is when the previous action was tabled to that January 7th meeting. So we'd like to provide the proposed amendments and advertise them in the time period necessary to bring this back before the board at a public hearing at the January 7th meeting. And at that meeting, it would be up to your discretion to decide how you wanted to take action on those proposed amendments. So that's what we would recommend. We would like some direction from the board.
Commissioner?
Where are we at on our agenda? Are we going to give you that answer now?
No, well, this is all I have, so I'll be glad to answer any questions.
You're asking a direction so that you can incorporate these things that we've discussed today into a new document to be advertised for comment period, and then a public hearing, and then potential passing
That's correct.
Right? Okay.
And scheduled for January 7th, which is where it's currently scheduled to be on.
You just want to nod, right?
That's correct. We don't need a motion. We don't need any official
Okay,
action. We just want some
bobblehead.
direction.
Okay, like we're in a sermon.
But Commissioner Ball, if anyone has any questions, I don't have any other presentation, but I'd be glad to answer any questions from anyone.
The only question I have is that, a lot of the comments that came in, I believe were addressed through the presentation, but then when I heard a little bit different things today, because all I heard today was cost. And what I'm also hearing is that it's bad now. So no matter and then several emails that came in said, don't change anything. Well, if cost is bad now, I think what we're trying to do is clear up some of the bureaucracy and trying to make it a little bit better. So this is no intention whatsoever to make costs go up. We're just trying to make things better because people are still moving to Baldwin County, many people a day, I think 19 on the average a day now. Just trying to keep Baldwin County a great place to live. So this is not intention of that. If there is some way that somebody can give me where these actual things that we're going to propose, other than, how that cost is going to severely impact the cost of that actual home versus what's going on with supply and demand, interest rates, insurance. I jotted down a few things that were mentioned. It was mentioned like insurance, interest rates, maintenance, different things like that. One thing I wanted to just point out was that the open space is a very minimal requirement on a regular subdivision, but if the complaint I hear from the development side is I'm having to pay so much per acre for open land, and I need to get so many lots out of that piece of land in order to justify building that. So what the encouragement was is a PRD where you can still have as many lots as you want. You can make them smaller, but give us something a little bit better than seeing a detention pond that's 20 foot wide running along a 1,320 foot ditch behind the wood fence that falls down when the hurricane comes. I'm just trying to get a little bit better quality of life for these people that live in, it's not my term, I didn't come up with cookie cutter subdivision, but I'm just, the lot size does not bother me as much as the quality of, and it's kind of like also a charge to you guys that I don't know who all you are in the room. I recognize a few faces, but come up with a little bit more creativity in your design to make it a little more appealing than just a grid. I don't know.
So you're correct, Commissioner Underwood, is that there's been a lot of discussion in the past about lot size, that lots should be bigger size lots, right? That's been a common theme of a lot of comments we receive from the citizens. So as was clearly stated today by the development community is that, the market is going to drive what people want. So we took a little different approach, is that we didn't think it was really appropriate to dictate larger lot size, which was a lot of the comments that were coming in at the end of last year. We said, well, let's look at maybe there's other ways we can achieve, let the market decide what it wants, but also make sure that we have good smart growth principles that are protecting that livability and quality of life of the neighborhoods and the developments. And the way to do that is have that open space balance, right? So it's like, hey, if the market wants small lots in whatever location, that's fine. We can do small lots, but we're just going to make sure they're designed in a way that there's some long-term livability and protection of the neighborhood and the community. That's kind of where we're at. It was really there's been this ongoing debate for quite some time about larger lots versus just properly designed and being more creativity with how you design smaller lots. And I think that's what our regulations are saying. It's like, hey, small lots are okay. You just need to design them the right way. Make sure we have enough open space that people can go walk their dog, and that's what we would expect. We're not talking about pools and crazy amenities. We're just saying, just have some open space where kids can go play ball. People can walk their dogs. That's all. We're not putting too much burden on the HOAs to deal with those areas. And again, it's that trade-off between small private space and more public space. So it definitely achieves that. And I think, a lot of the other things when it comes to the open space is stuff that we I'm sure you all hear too, we consistently hear on a consistent basis from communities around Baldwin County saying, hey, can we just get some landscaping, some buffers, some things? So we understand growth is going to happen, and we're fine with that. We just want it to not have as much impact on the neighbors that are already there. And that's what this is accomplished. So as Reed mentioned earlier, because the Planning Commission hears this a lot, is he was right, is that we're just trying to find this balance. We know growth, but what we want is, growth is going to happen. We want it to be in a harmonious way that really protects the quality of life of Baldwin County and sets up things for future generations. So there's definitely a balance there. And just to also just reiterate that a lot of the things all the things we're putting in here, these are standard modern planning and engineering practices. This is not something we've just come up with. This is standard practice across the country. This is how things development occurs and how things should be done. It's not to affect market prices or anything like that. It's just to really just make sure development's being done under current standards.
Well, Jay, you got the commission's blessing to move forward, so you know what you need to do, and we'll go from there. Any press here? Any questions from the press? Commissioner comments? Anybody? Skip? Commissioner Ball?
Just thank y'all.
Yeah. The only thing I want to say is thank y'all for coming out and putting y'all's input into this. This is a partnership. Is it going to be right? No. It's not going to be perfect for everybody. It's not. I've learned that being on the commission for 2 years. Can't please everybody. But this is a good cooperation with everybody coming together and talking about it and getting it done. So I just want to say thank y'all for that. Staff, thank you also for doing this. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Adjourn.